Hello, welcome to this latest HFS Hot Vendors Fireside chat. We like to call them a podcast or a video cast. It depends how you're consuming them. But I'm here today with Gregg Antenen, who's the Executive Managing Director at Vistio. Now, Vistio is a workflow-oriented solution that allows contact center agents to navigate their interactions with customers more easily. Vistio provides an on-screen guidance for agents to interact with customers, providing next step options and scripting, while pulling data from different systems to inform them of critical customer information. And we named Vistio HFS Hot Vendor in Q1 2022 for its intuitive guidance capability, deep customization, and the ability to quickly create new workflows and interaction. Contact centers are all about creating a better customer experience, which Vistio helps its clients achieve. More importantly, Vistio helps solve the biggest problem that contact centers have always faced: attrition. Employee engagement is a critical pillar of our HFS One Office mindset. Vistio is enabling customer-facing employees to put their best foot forward, effectively connecting employee experience and customer experience. So, welcome, Gregg. Tell us a bit about your journey, because I understand you're the founder of Vistio. So,
yes.
So what made you do that? What was the problem you were trying to solve that was out there?
Yeah, so it's rather an interesting journey because we've always been involved with call centers, and it's been 20 years. And the folks that I work with and people that we've made part of our team, they've all been in the call center business. And it seemed like every time we go into a call center and we would sit down at the agent's desk, and I encourage everybody to do that, go sit at an agent's desk and live out the dream there. We would see them struggling, and it didn't matter the industry, it didn't matter what they were working on, what types of calls they were taking, the things that were put in front of them, they really had to struggle to figure out how to give the right answer as quickly as possible to the consumer. And that hasn't changed over time. It's the same problem. And it's that piece when I sat with the agents and just saw them struggle. I've even had agents cry as they tried to navigate multiple systems and all that stuff and all that struggle. And so when we were tasked with providing solutions to companies for what they were trying to do, it didn't matter. And one of our big ones was helping doctors and nurses solve for taking the health history of an individual. And even those individuals who are highly educated struggled with what was being asked of them until we came up with the solution that guided them step by step through that process. And so when you had even those highly educated individuals struggling, just think what we do with everybody else who's an agent, right? And so that was really the kind of the moment that said, hey, we've got to change this.
So I can understand that would have been a key moment in your journey. Maybe talk us through how you got to that point. You've obviously had experience in the industry to that point, but also where the business has moved through its steps to take us up to today.
Yeah, so the first thing we really looked at was how could we put in front of the agent something that was interactive, that it didn't need to listen to the phone call, but it needed to follow along as they were listening to the phone call and trying to figure out what to do next. And so it was that capability. And as soon as we solved that problem in that health situation, then we started looking at other industries, and we just found the problem everywhere. And so we just said, hey, we've got to be able to create this capability to be able to quickly put in front of agents all of these detailed workflows. And then the one other aspect of this was not only did you have to be able to do a workflow, but it had to handle the call from the beginning all the way to the end, all the notes taking, all of the things that an agent is responsible for. it couldn't be just about how do I give them the answer to the question, right? It had to be all the things that they get graded for in a QA report or things that go into CSAT. And so we wanted to do that entire spectrum of the call.
So a couple of questions that arise for me from that.
Sure.
One is the technology. Has this been technology that you've had to create, or are you able to pull together off-the-shelf solutions?
Well, yeah. So the capability that does this is all homegrown by our chief technologist, and that is proprietary. But the key to this industry, you keep seeing technologies come out and being sold as single technologies. Take AI, for example, or RPA. These technologies, and they're kind of sold as the solution to the end of the problem, right? And they're really just a technology. And so our overall Vistio solution uses those technologies when they're most appropriate. So RPA is great, but it's not for everyone. It's not in every situation. AI, for example, can do some amazing things, yet most phone calls are a yes/no type situation. And you can't make all the mistakes that you need to train an AI agent to actually solve for the problem. You've got to tell it, this is what I want to do 100% of the time. Think about that in a compliance scenario. So we like to use all of those technologies when they're most suited to be used. But the underlying capability and the solution that is Vistio is all proprietary.
So you've effectively built an end-to-end solution.
Yes.
Using some plug-in technologies where required. And in terms of, because one of the key elements, I think, of what Vistio does is being able to grab data from a myriad of sources. You explained the complexity very well of how life was pre-Vistio, if you like. So does that require a lot of APIs, or does that require different kind of workflow management? What's going on to make all this magic happen?
Yeah. So the first thing we do is set the workflow. And so when you set the workflow, you say, this is exactly how our client, for instance, wants the phone call handled. Then you determine the inputs to that workflow, and those are the types of data points you go to. And so instead of thinking of typical integrations where you say, well, just let me know what data you have and we'll go get all the data you have, right? And then it becomes this massive project. We can tell you the value of one data point, and is it worth creating the API or doing the integration that's going to deliver that API or that data point, because it'll actually solve and automate the information or the answer that the agent needs to give to the consumer. But at the foundation of that, we use all of the existing APIs that the other systems have. So we never try to have a client system have to write an API to us. We are very adept at just using whatever they have. And you think about phone systems and CRMs and those systems, most of them all have standard APIs. And all you need to do is get a few data points, and it can really make a difference in kind of how the agent achieves that phone call.
Got you. So that's the technology aspect. I heard earlier you mentioned agents in tiers, right? So what you are doing is taking away the tiers, making it a no tiers operation. Tell me how that actually translates in terms of employee experience. I mentioned in the intro this idea of reducing attrition. We know it's a known problem in the industry, and it's actually a hugely scaling problem globally right now in most industries. So the idea of improving the employee experience in order to also serve a better customer experience is right at the heart of our One Office thinking. So can you tell us a little bit about how Vistio's actually seen measurable impact in its application in improving employee experience or indeed customer experience?
Yeah, sure. So it's really interesting that CX has been the word for the last number of years, right? We got to go after CX. And what we determined is, look, if you don't have an agent who is happy and capable of doing their work, it's really hard for them to deliver the CX levels that we want to deliver. The other thing that we really focused on was you and I as consumers and everybody as consumers have gotten so used to the mobile solution that we get on our phones, right? And just have an app and click through a few things, and the app always guides us to the thing until we get so far we have to call into the call center. Then we call into the call center, and guess what? That person doesn't have that experience. Like the agent is not sitting in front of an app that they can just click through. And that's kind of what the agent, when they get hired, is expecting, right? They think they're going to go into this big Fortune 500 company and they're going to have wonderful systems and this will all be magical. And all they need to do is talk pleasantly to the consumer. Well, that's what we're doing within Vistio, is trying to give them that experience of the easy app for handling the phone call, right? Because we're no longer about self-serve at that point. And, people don't like to hear it, but there's always going to be phone calls, right? And so we're always going to have certain amount of consumer interactions that are going to end up in the call center. And that experience really needs to be along the lines of what you guys profess with the one office, right? And this fits into that one office in that help the consumer to self-serve all the way along as far as they can go. And when you send them to another person or they choose to talk to somebody, that experience just continues on for the combination, because it's really a combination. Those two people working on the answer to the customer's problem.
I think it's an absolutely wise approach, because you speak to anyone who's ever had to call a call center, the reason most people are doing that, I think, is they've got a bit angry about something. They've got to the point where they can't work out what to do on the website. Right. Something's failing. And so the person they speak to at the other end has got to have everything at their fingertips. Otherwise, you get into, I don't know whether you're familiar with there was a British TV series once, and there was always this example, a comedy thing, where there's an example and of a person in a bank, and every time someone would come in and ask them a question, they'd just tap away at their computer, look up and say, "Computer says no." And there was this idea that if you don't give the humans that are trying to interact with you the capability to do more than say what a computer would have said, then you're stuck. So I think what you're trying to do is bring all of that information that is available to help that employee be the expert they need to be when they're speaking to the customer and solve the customer problem.
You're actually stating an interesting example where the computer just says no. Well, in fact, that's where we're headed, which is to say yes or no, or say this, or this is the answer, right? Because right now, when we go down into the call center and we look at what they've been provided 10 different systems, a CRM, a back office system, and this and that system, and this resource and that resource, but nothing that says, here's how you answer the question. It's all about, let's throw as much information in front of the agent and hope they sort it all out and give that answer. And so then that person that was clicking away at the keyboard and saying no just has ended up there because it's like, I don't know, I can't figure it out. So no.
Absolutely. So the market has been in an interesting place, I guess, over the last few years. Like most, there's a lot of change going on. What are you seeing as the challenges in your market right now?
Yeah.
And how are you seeing people respond to them?
So I think it's one primary piece, which is the agent is so often forgotten in the equation of offering service, right? So all of this digital transformation, all the move to the one office is heavily front-end loaded, allowing the consumer to self-serve and to do various things, chat bot, right? All of those things that will automate things, deflect phone calls, because those are a cost driver for the company. And also consumers want to self-serve in general, right? But then once that call gets to the agent is often forgotten. And typically what we see are CRMs and other tools that will, again, we said, put the information in front of the agent, but not give them the solution. Often those systems are all about collecting data, collecting information, right? And really not thinking about what is the experience of the agent. And so that market challenge is getting companies to be thinking in that frame of mind. First off, the call center shouldn't be thought of as an expense center. It is a value center, right? It speaks to your brand. And many companies have started to make that transition, but we still see, even in a lot of those companies, this aspect of the agent will figure it out, right? We'll give them a bunch of training and they'll figure it out. So we have that issue that they need to change that mindset. The other big thing that's happening right now is, of course, everybody's going through wage pressure, right? And so costs in the call center are rising in a budgeted area where, because it's a cost center, budgets are kind of frozen, right? And so spending the time to transition your call center from a cost center to a value center, that may not be in the cards because your wages are going up, and you're like, well, we'll just transition as much as we can to self-help so that we can eliminate agents, right? And try to reduce that hourly cost. You reduce the hourly cost by improving that process in the back office, because you make the agent faster, you require fewer phone calls, your attrition is better, all of those things that really are the cost driver of the call center. And so it is a little bit of a change of thought for many of the leaders who are responsible for that P&L. And so that's kind of the market challenge that we deal with. And it's kind of this double-edged sword. Budgets are stretched, yet they want automation and efficiency to help reduce calls to the agents, or to make the agent faster so they have to handle fewer calls per consumer. And so there's a dichotomy that's working that is a challenge.
It is a challenge, Greg. We've seen it in our own data. We've seen automation gone right back to the top of the agenda. And yet the same data tells us that people are not, they regard themselves as beginners in their automation journey, which is all about exactly trying to take cost out, trying to automate cost out. I always think that probably if your question is, or if your answer is automation, the question is probably wrong. Right? So the question should be about, well, how can I create more value rather than, and I think I'm hearing that in your own approach. So what does that mean for you guys in the next 12 to 18 months? So that's as you point out, conditions are changing. There's new realities dawning. Are you going to be sticking to your guns and saying, look, there is only one way in which you create value? I mean, why are you trying to save money? You should be creating value first and foremost. Or are you going to have to play it a bit pragmatically? What do you see those next 12 to 18 months doing for Vistio, your growth, or even your roadmap as a result?
Yeah. Well, certainly the value proposition, has many value points. One of them can be cost savings. And so everybody is budget conscious. And so we have to be about, how do you show the ROI for what we're producing or what we're implementing, right? And so, the focus still is on efficiency. So you still can take people out of the process. So I don't think we change our focus from that standpoint. You may have a push towards the value proposition point being simply, how can I take people out of the process, right? And we're perfectly positioned for that. The real step up we have here over the next 12, 24 months is we've had the last 3-4 years of learning this particular solution set and how it works within a call center, because there are all kinds of workflow engines out there, right? But the path to actually deploying one that drives the return on investment, there's a pure set of learnings we have that are unique to us that we'll be applying in unique ways. And so we continue to think that we're in front of people. So you think about hot new vendors, we think we continue to illustrate that in our offering. The other piece that we're focused on, each time we go into, and we're across, I don't know, about 6-7 industries now. Each time we're in an industry, creating an industry vertical set of capabilities is also very unique. So not only do you have workflow, but how do I handle what is very specifically challenges for that particular industry? Take whether it's the health industry, you could take tolling. You could take utilities, for example. Utilities has a significant set of call center challenges that require universal agents, require lots of training. You're talking about 4 to 6 months of proficiency for an agent. When you can reduce that by 2 and 3 months to get to proficiency, that's great for attrition. That's great for cost savings. The industry vertical capability we bring, you'll see that exploding over the next 12 to 24 months.
And any thoughts about expanding into different markets, geographies?
I don't think we're geographically bound. Primarily we're in the U.S. now, just because that's where we started, and that's, there's obviously a whole host of opportunity there. But we're talking all shores. It doesn't really matter which agent you talk about. As you talk about going offshore and you have a lower wage rate, your savings come from a different element, right? Because your attrition and your wage rate is less, and so your costs there are different. You have to really solve the problem of how do I get the right answer to the consumer, because it's driving 5 calls instead of 2 calls, right? You need to reduce the number of calls. So there's nothing geographically that we're concerned about or that we have to play to, other than that element. How you calculate the value is just different.
So, Gregg, I'd personally like to thank you for making everyone's lives easier. I think there is a reality about that. We've all had frustrations with call centers in the past, and anyone doing great work to improve the experience on both sides of the coin has to be applauded. I'm just wondering whether there's any particular things, any particular standouts about what you guys do that you'd like to leave our audience remembering about you.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question there, because I just mentioned that there are all kinds of workflow tools out there. The CRM guys have their workflow they add on, and the phone systems have their workflow, and then you have some other standalone workflow solutions out there. The way we think about this, and I think this is probably the big differentiator, is instead of software as a service, where you just go out to the website, download the software, and then you go try to make it work, right? Or go buy a big license and here's your software. If you want help figuring out how to deploy that license, we're here and we'll charge huge dollars to help you do that. That's not what we do. We do solution as a service. You tell us a problem, we're going to use Vistio technology and capability to solve for the problem, but it's our team that is working with your team, and it's all embedded in the price. So our team starts with you, creates the solution, and then continues to maintain and move that solution all the way through, so that you don't have to become the expert at how to do this. You just run the call center. But you're the expert on your business. We're the expert on how you solve for that business.
Gregg, I think that's a great summary. I'd like to thank you for your time. I'm sure our audience has enjoyed hearing more about Vistio, and we're going to be watching carefully and really enjoying the story of your growth over the next few years. So thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thank you, David. Good to talk with you.